law matters. Of course it does. Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, your host and moderator. This program, as you know, has been created to educate, inform, and help you with law matters because the law matters. Understand the law better, and you're in a better position to protect yourself, your family, and your business. Over these episodes, we've been trying to provide information and resources that would help you decide whether or not you need outside counsel. Perhaps we'll help you determine that you might be able to handle some issues on your own. If you do need professional counsel, hopefully, as a result of this segment and these segments, you'll be better prepared, and so will the counsel that you select. The idea, of course, is for you to save time, money, and hopefully achieve better results. We, as always, want to welcome and thank the Bazar law firm in East Providence, who continues to share their insights and their perspectives on each of the topics that we tackle. And with us today is David Bazar.
Hi, Deb.
So it's the time of the year. 'Tis the season to be jolly, and I guess as social host, Santa Claus, gift giver, we're supposed to be helping people right now so that they don't get stuck by the Grinches who either steal Christmas, steal the gifts, steal the money, and possibly even their identity. And I guess we should also once again revisit the idea of you being, once someone is a social host at a party, we don't want them to suffer some of the tragedies, personal and financial, I guess, of those underage drinkers and those who are far too inebriated to be leaving your party. So let's start with the social host laws. You're a gracious host. You want to offer food and adult libations. What are the issues surrounding that, David?
Okay, so we have two issues with social hosting in general, civil and criminal liability, and also, at least in Rhode Island and to some degree in Massachusetts too, whether you're hosting adults or children. So in general, you have a party at your house in Rhode Island, and you have adults over and you serve alcohol, and they go out and they get into an accident with someone else, and someone else is injured by their act. You as the social host probably, always probably, because in the law it's never a certainty, probably don't owe any responsibility to the person, the third party who was injured in that accident. And the Supreme Court has been pretty clear that if we're going to change the rules of liability on a civil level for hosting parties and serving alcohol as an individual, not as a business, that's up to the legislature to change the law, not the Supreme Court.
When something does happen, while you're talking about civil and criminal, who decides? Does it vary state by state? Is it usually the district attorney of the state who determines whether or not that's going to be civil or actually likely to be going charged as a criminal offense?
So in Massachusetts, we have district attorneys. In Rhode Island, the attorney general, and then the police departments that will investigate a potential crime and suggest whether or not it should be prosecuted. So in Rhode Island, the prosecution of a criminal case generally involves hosting a party where alcohol is served or provided to minors. And in Barrington, about 2008, I think it might have been, or thereabouts, maybe 2010, there was a party where the children were outside, and Barrington police wanted to press charges, but the Attorney General said, I think we've got a little loophole in the law here because it's talking about inside the premises, inside the residence. And so as a result of that, the legislature changed the law. And so serving alcohol, providing alcohol, allowing alcohol to be consumed anywhere on the property, inside or outside, is now a criminal offense.
I read that these social host laws vary from state to state, and some with more loopholes, as you indicate, than others. In general, what is a social host? It's different from what is the dram law. Could you explain what the differences are?
So I'm having a Christmas party, and it's at my home, and I invite my co-workers or friends or whoever over to my house and serve alcohol. I'm a social host. And if I'm not serving minors, and the law in Rhode Island is that the person consuming the alcohol is responsible for their own actions. So there's no liability generally on me, unless, and so I say generally because there's always, you can find exceptions to every rule. But if I am purposely over-serving someone to the point where they are ill and die, I think we might be able to find that I've done something beyond just a social host situation, which is allowing people to drink and have a good time. And then when they leave, like I said, if they get into an accident elsewhere, the third party certainly doesn't have any claim against me as a social host, as opposed to the Dram Shop Act that you refer to, which would be a business that is in a bar or a restaurant that's in the business of serving alcohol. Now, the rules that apply to them are very different than the rules that apply to somebody who's hosting a party at their home. And they do bear liability for over-serving somebody, and they do bear liability potentially for allowing someone to leave their establishment who's clearly intoxicated and then injures a third party out on the road.
So does that mean that theoretically, if you wanted to be a host, but not social host in your home, but a host for a party, that you're off the hook entirely if you say, let's move that party to a restaurant or a facility that serves alcohol and has the liquor license, and then the onus is on them? Is that really a loophole that's legitimate, or is it
It's not really a loophole, it's the way it is.
It is the way
what
it is.
I mean by that is I have an office and I want to have a Christmas party, and my Christmas party's at a restaurant. The restaurant is controlling the alcohol. I'm not controlling the alcohol, and therefore the people who run the restaurant, the bartenders, the servers, the owners, have a right to say, you have had too much to consume, I'm not serving you anymore. Or in the alternative, if they think that you've reached a level of intoxication that it's not safe for you to go, they can tell you, we're going to order a cab for you or an Uber or whatever it is these days and send you out, so that they're protecting the safety of the public, and it's on their training and their liability insurance and their watch that the alcohol is being served, and the effect that it's having on people is under their control.
So, David, I read in one circumstance in Massachusetts where somebody was saying that since no money changed hands in the capacity, as long as no money is changing hands and you had a party at some other place, even if it was not a restaurant and you were serving alcohol, if no money changed hands, then you aren't liable. Is that really a possibility?
I would have to know more exactly about the details of where this was happening and what was happening. So if I'm having a party at my office, the Christmas party, and I hire a caterer, and I'm paying them both to serve the food and the alcohol, I would think that the caterer may bear some responsibility as the owner of the license to sell the alcohol. If it's at my home, but I just happen to do it at the office, and it's potluck and everyone's bringing their own food and alcohol in, perhaps what you said might be correct, but I wouldn't be as comfortable as saying that that's 100% absolute.
Okay, and while we're having this session and it's December and people are thinking about holiday parties, while we're talking about social hosting laws, how about it's 4th of July and there's a barbecue, and yes, you may have it in your home. Yes, you could have it perhaps at a beach or at a another facility. Same rules apply?
Yeah, I think you could argue that. And I think part of the Dram Shop Act is dealing with people who have liquor licenses and who are being paid to serve and who have an obligation to have tips training for their bar staff and waitresses, which is training in recognizing when someone's been overserved or the effects of alcohol and how to control people and all of that. So if you're saying that this is a firm outing, so to speak, at a park where everyone is bringing the food and there's nobody being paid to do it, and no one's responsible for one particular aspect of it, then I think you might be able to make that argument. But as an attorney, I'm always going to look to find any liability I can, wherever I can. So if it's a sponsored function by a business, and they have liability insurance, and I can find some way of making them responsible, I'm going to look to do that.
Okay. And while we're talking about adults serving adults, such as if you are in the workforce, when we talked about the underage drinking, what about you're the parent and you bought the liquor and the party is off-site, maybe not at your house. Can that come back and bite you also because you were the one who did something illegal in the first place, namely buying the alcohol for an underage person?
Right. There's different statutes that cover different things. Buying alcohol for someone under the age of 21, there's a criminal statute for that. Buying alcohol and having them take it away from your home doesn't necessarily protect you from the criminal statute. Again, we'll have the same issues on civil liability that you would have whether it was at your home or not. And civil liability with minors, there is some case law in Rhode Island and Massachusetts where you can be held liable civilly for injuries to a minor where they were served alcohol at your party. And one case in particular I'm thinking about in Rhode Island was protecting a minor who was at the party. And the alcohol was served to excess. One person, because of the alcohol, was emboldened to take a baseball bat and took it to the head of one of the other partygoers. And the court said that the owners of that property had a special duty, a special relationship with the minors who were at that party to protect them. And therefore, when that child was injured as a result of the alcohol and the baseball bat and everything that was happening at that party, they found liability. Whether they would extend that to somebody who was injured away from the property probably isn't as clear and not as likely, because what special duty then would you have to that third party who was injured? However, I think that there's always a moral obligation not to allow the drinking to happen in the first place, but beyond that, to allow a child to leave the home after they'd been drinking.
And under what circumstances do the parents essentially get a pass if the underage children decide to go someplace off-site and have their own party? You didn't buy the alcohol for them, but somehow someone did, and there's a problem. Is every parent culpable? Because how could they be?
No, the statute doesn't go that far. So if your minor child somehow, without your knowledge, help, or doing anything, obtains alcohol and goes somewhere else and drinks it, you're not going to be criminally responsible for the action of those children. If your child's at a party somewhere else and there's alcohol being served, again, you're not criminally responsible for what happened there.
Okay, and there's just one other issue. At the beginning of the segment, you mentioned something about if someone is served alcohol, they go out, they are drunk, they hit someone else, you as the social host aren't liable. What happens to the person who injures himself? Are you liable for that? I mean, at what point does any individual who manages to become intoxicated take responsibility for himself?
So in Massachusetts, there could be liability for that person who left the home of your party and injured someone, but it's really a difficult case to prove, and there's not a lot of good case law saying that there is. It's not as clear to me in Massachusetts as it is in Rhode Island that you wouldn't be liable. So I guess to answer your question on the person who's injured as a result of you over-serving them liquor, there's probably, under the case law the way it is right now, not liability. But as I gave you the example earlier on, where you just serve and serve and serve and have drinking games and do things to the point where this person is so intoxicated they die from it, you might find the courts changing their view on that. So in general, again, the way the status of the law is in just a general situation where someone drinks a moderate amount, maybe a little more than a moderate amount, gets injured in an accident leaving your home, you're not going to be responsible. In fact, the liability of a restaurant with the Dram Shop Act in that situation is lessened for the person who they served as opposed to a third party who they injured.
Okay.
And the difference is reckless serving versus negligent serving. So if you negligently serve somebody at a restaurant and you're the restaurant owner and they go out and injure somebody, you could be held liable. If you recklessly serve somebody and they go out and hurt themselves, you could be liable. But you won't be liable if you're just negligent in serving them. So do you want an example of what reckless might be versus negligent?
Why not?
Okay. So if someone is at a bar and they're drinking and you've come to the conclusion that they may have been served too much, and you allow them to leave, and you're the only place they've been and you serve them, it's possible that you were negligent in serving them that last drink and they injured someone. You're reckless when you serve a minor at a bar and don't card them. You're reckless if, and this is the example I gave when I taught hospitality law, someone's passed out on your bar, sleeping from drinking too much, wakes up and orders another drink, and you serve them. So when you serve them to the point of intoxication where you've clearly put them at risk, then you're going to be held reckless for serving them.
I was going to ask, gee, if someone is arrested or something happens, is this a do-it-yourself or do you need a lawyer? Based on what you just explained, I would guess that your answer would be an automatic yes, you do need a lawyer if you end up in one of these predicaments, because there are so many nuances that one couldn't possibly understand.
Almost all of these cases require legal representation. If you got to the point where you're either being criminally prosecuted or served civilly with a lawsuit.
Okay. So, moving on to ho, 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 the 12 scams of Christmas, and I'm sure that there are even more, but I guess in the news almost every evening and every morning we hear about someone's ordered something online, had it delivered at their house, and there are people stalking, just waiting for the package to arrive, and before you get home, it's gone.
Right. So that delivery of the packages has really become an issue, and I've seen on the news other things being stolen from people's homes, Christmas decorations and that type of thing, security cameras catching it. Yes, there is a big issue with people following UPS, FedEx, the Postal Service around and stealing packages off of property. There's tracking numbers on many packages, and they can probably track it to when it got to your house, and usually if it's got to be signed for, it's the best way to protect against something just being taken, because if they require the signature, then it's not just going to be left there. So that's the best protection that you can do.
And now that you can have alcohol delivered to your house, but you have to sign for it, that's 1 and 2. That takes care of that. But of course, as you mentioned this, the issue about tracking now, apparently, thanks to the wonders of online, there's online tracking. And there are scammers who have figured out how to take that tracking number and reissue it and say, send you an email, just check here, click here, David, and we'll tell you what the status of your tracking is. And what they've done is copycat. So what happens when someone who you've bought something from, they themselves are scammed, and then another email that is a lookalike comes your way? What should you do before you click on to track that?
So I never click on anything that's sent to me unless it's something that I actually requested.
But you did request, you ordered something.
All right, so if I know what's going on with these things, I wouldn't click into it. I would call the company I ordered it from and ask them if they sent it to me, and if they said they did, then I'd ask them to resend it. I wouldn't just click into it. And certainly some of these places send out these emails telling you, click into this to track your package. Well, you have your own tracking number, you know how it was sent. You can click into FedEx or UPS or whoever it is, put the number in yourself into their system and check it that way.
Smart. Obviously, so many of these scams now take place online, and isn't it not surprising to know that people want to download all of these convenient apps, and I guess new this season, something to make your Christmas shopping easier. Just click here and this app will save you time and money, etc. And apparently there are a proliferation of new apps that are just not what they claim to be. How do you get to know that? Do you go back and Google it first before you download an app?
Yes.
Yes.
Because if you download an app and you don't know what it is, it can either put malware onto your computer or phone or wherever you're putting it, or it may ask you to give information that they will then take and use for other purposes. So I don't do any apps unless I know what it's about and have researched it.
And of course, everyone loves to do competitive shopping. That's terrific. But the minute the new iPad, whatever it is out for sale with a posted price, the minute someone sees something online that says we can get you a better deal and get it in time for the holidays and whatnot, again, what's the safest recommendation you would have for someone when they see that? Who wouldn't be attracted by a very costly item now being served up at a great discount?
Right. So that's another situation where I will only use reputable retailers or e-tailers, I guess you would call them these days.
Yes, that's right.
So that I know that it's a place that I've either been to or, has a well-known national reputation. And I'm not going to click into one of those things that might take me halfway around the world to who knows where, that may or may never ship me something, or it may just take my money.
And apparently new this year, or maybe not new this year, but in higher quantities, are the festival travel scams, or festive, I should say, travel scams, where more people like to get away right after the holidays. And so travel companies certainly do offer discounts if you want to click here, buy now. And apparently there are a lot of ghost companies who are doing the same and make it sound like they are affiliated with some of the known names, travel packages or land or sea packages, and apparently those too are scams and end up tricking the bargain hunter and stealing their identity and so on.
You get an email to look into this bargain, and it's trying to make you think it's affiliated with a well-known company that has a good reputation. You don't click into that email, you go to the website of the well-known company and make sure that it's really something that they have sponsored or it's part of what they're doing.
So follow-up to that is there are a lot of well-known e-greeting card companies with well-known names because they've been around for a few years by now, and you have heard that name before. You receive an e-greeting and it's from one of those well-known companies. Yeah. Again, it's not that well-known company, it's a shadow of that company.
Right.
How do you circumvent that? Do you go back to the original company.com and try to find whoever sent something for you? Who does that?
Yeah, I don't open those.
I just don't
open them, even if it's from the well-known company. If somebody sent me something and they tell me, or I sent you this, then I'll go back and open it. But unless I know who it's from and that it was sent legitimately, I'm not taking the chance.
A lot of malware and Trojans out there.
Right.
Online games. Who doesn't like to play online games if you're into online gaming? And apparently those can be something downloaded to computers and smartphones and tablets. And young people are the ones who are shopping for them. Mom says, okay, you can have a new game, dear. And when they do, when they are downloading some of these games, it's a deceptive ploy to say, you can have this and you can save your parents money or save money. They do it and they're in trouble. How do you handle that prophylactically? Take your child aside and say, don't do it? Don't do it.
So my youngest daughter is in college, senior. So what she does. I can't stop that. But when my children were younger, to the extent that we had these types of things, I never let them download anything without talking to me first. So how do you do it? It certainly depends how old the child is. If it's a young child that you're just letting use your equipment, you can monitor it that way. An older child, it is more difficult to monitor, and you got to just hope and train and teach your child the dangers of what can happen. And it's the same thing as we've talked about before with children and sending risque text messages and all of that stuff. It's about good parenting.
Yet you can't be omnipresent.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about this before, but Charities, 'tis the season, and 'tis the season for tax deductions. Some various charities that you might have given to before might likely reach out and say, David would like a little more because there's a new circumstance. So wouldn't you be inclined then to click on that link because you've given to that charity before, and here you go, it's not that charity and you're stuck?
Right. So that's another one where maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but the charities that I give to, I don't do the email thing. It's phone or mail. My college, my high school, all of those things. I know this is the time of year when they're hoping that you'll give to them because you want to get it out before the end of the year for tax deduction purposes. But I do believe that there's sophisticated enough bad people out there who can track who gives where, what you give, and try to, what do you call it, phishing?
Phishing.
Make the email look like it's from one place when it's from another. And if you're more technology based than I am, you might be able to look and see by looking at the site, the address in it, that it's actually from where it's supposed to be from. And if you're confident of it, fine. But I like the old-fashioned communication for that type of thing. And I do not give to any charity that calls that I haven't heard of or dealt with before, especially this time of year.
So while we were talking about some fake online charities, and you mentioned the old-fashioned or say traditional ways of donating, those who still send out the request by mail, at least then you have an opportunity to put something in the envelope or not, and you're less likely to have identity theft through the online practices.
Yes, and if you get the phone call, you know, I never agree right away. I say, send me some mail, send me something, some information so I can look at it, but I won't give a credit card ever over the phone. Yeah, I want to donate to you. Here's my credit card information, and do you want my date of birth and social security number too?
Not at all.
Never give it.
So this year there's a new one called Secret Sisters, and if you just send $10, you will very soon, by online measures, get 36 gifts back. That is problematic on several levels. Would you like to address that?
So it sounds like a pyramid scheme to begin with, which is problematic. And again, what information are you giving out there? Those are definitely just red flags before you even start to stay away from.
So beware of Secret Sisters, which is, I guess, something that has been started and is proliferating through Facebook in particular.
Yeah.
So,
you know, anytime you end up with a pyramid scheme, they're a scheme for a reason, because people end up getting hurt. And so I would suggest that even if it weren't a pyramid scheme, anything that you get like that through the internet, you should be cautious of and try to stay away from, unless you know other people who have had, you know, involvement with it before.
Okay. And the one other thing I think we mentioned too around this season, usually people want to find reliable dating sites instead of looking for love in all the wrong places online, because those two have become notorious for stealing your identity and social security and the rest, so beware.
Exactly.
So one other quick question, back on the social hosting, does insurance get you out of the woods if you've been caught and put in a bad situation? You have liability insurance. Does umbrella insurance cover the rest of your issues if you are in trouble?
Two things if we have time. Insurance can protect you on a civil claim. It won't have any effect on a criminal claim against you.
Okay.
And we didn't really talk about gift cards too, but remember, stay away from pulling those gift cards off the shelf where someone could have written the number down and then gone online to see if it's been activated.
Good. Thank you for the wrap-up. We hope that these have been helpful to you. We hope that you don't have any problems with social hosting issues or any of your gift giving this season. Thank you for tuning into the Law Matters. Please do stay tuned because it matters to you.